He's excited from the last hour. Well, prepare to get excited again. We have our guest, Rayelan Allen. I hope I'm saying that right. Rayelan, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Allen is joining us now. Rayelan Allen, she is the author of several books on diverse and intriguing topics, ranging from Templar prosperity meditations to exploring Princess Diana's role in the machinations of the New World Order. And she does not shy away from any strange or esoteric topics, let me tell you. She is a wealth of, I guess I would say, strange information. And we're going to be blown away this next hour here. Now, how are you doing tonight, Miss Allen?
Oh, a very full life these days, as I imagine most Americans do. You know, how many people in your audience have had to take on a second job in addition to everything else they're doing? You know, just to try to keep a roof over their head and food in their mouth.
I'll tell you, I'm doing good just to have one job.
Well, I am. I'm just a little exhausted from all the many things that I am involved in. So if I sound kind of funny, that's the only reason. So what exactly were we going to talk about tonight? Were we going to talk about mind control, or maybe Project Bluebeam and what they were planning on doing with Princess Diana into making her a goddess? And yeah, that sounds like a good one. Do you want to do that one?
That sounds great to me. That's what I was actually. You know, the Princess Diana one's cool to me because I don't think I've ever heard the whole theory kind of posited out. You know what I mean? It's a really interesting topic. Let's go ahead with that. Let's see where the night takes us.
Okay. Well, the thing about that one is, you know, I wrote that book in 1999, maybe even earlier. But I think I wrote it at the end of, you know, right after she died, because I put up my website on it in 1998. So the website's been around since 1998. So that's how old the book is. You know, 10, 12 years old, something like that. My thesis at the time that I was writing the book was that Princess Diana's image was going to be used to become the new goddess Diana. And all of the religions of the world were going to be eliminated because they are patriarchal religions, and we were going to go back to the goddess religion. And if you look at our environmental policies right at the moment, how we've got the Chicago climate exchange, where lots and lots of people are making lots and lots of money on selling these pollution credits. Now, this idea of selling pollution credits has actually been around a long time. It would be if General Electric plant over in Philadelphia was putting out 5 tons of pollutants, and this plant over here in California was putting out 0 pollutants. Well, the government had offered them X amount of numbers of pollutants that they could trade, so that the one that's putting out all the pollutions could just buy the credits from the California farm, and then, you know, everything would be even. Of course, the one over there, the General Electric plant, would still be putting out all of the pollution that it ever was, but whoever was in the middle trading the pollution credits would actually end up with money. Now, I can't even remember how long ago that was tried. It was 10, 15, could be even 20 years ago that was tried. Nobody even mentions it anymore. But in 1993, there was a man named Maurice Strong, and everybody needs to remember this name, Maurice Strong. Maurice Strong is the person that really would prefer to do away with modern civilization. And if we did away with modern civilization so that nobody ever burned oil again, nobody ever used electricity again, nobody ever caused any problems again, that would save the planet. It would also put all of those who have money right at the moment, and I'm talking about the ultra billionaires, the ones that are bordering on being trillionaires. It would put those people in a position of power from which they could never be removed, because there would never be another Bill Gates. There would never be another Intel owner. There would never be another Steven Spielberg. In other words, no one would ever be able to rise up from the ranks of, the little people into the ranks of the big guys. Now, sometimes I wonder about Bill Gates. I think that he was chosen. His mother worked for IBM, and I genuinely think that Bill Gates is an IBM operation, but I can't prove it, so I don't talk about it very much. This dream that I just laid out, that was Maurice Strong's dream, and he introduced it at the Rio Summit in 1993, and he introduced it in a form that is called Agenda 21. And essentially what Agenda 21 will do, none of us will drive cars anymore. At least the cars we drive won't be fueled by gas. Most of us will live on islands of humanity. The rest of the country will belong to the animals and to the New World Order elite. If they want to go hunt them animals, if they want to go strip mine, they can do anything they want. They just want the humans, those dirty little people that they have to depend on for something every now and then. They want those people living on islands of humanity so that the rich never have to deal with them unless they want to come in and do some interviews for maid service. Okay, so what Agenda 21 says that it's going to do is restore the environment to its pristine nature. What it doesn't tell you is that it also, that this pristine nature and people living on islands of humanity, there's only 500,000 of those people. Or maybe it's 5,500,000. There's very few people. We've got 8 billion right now. It's almost 8.5 billion people are going to be eliminated under Maurice Strong's plan. Now, why did I bring up Maurice Strong? Because he and others like him are the high priests of the Church of Diana. And if any of you listening are out there in Texas, there is a Diana, Texas, that has a Church of Diana. And that's not the Church of Diana I'm talking about. The Church of Diana is going to be the Church of the goddess who takes care of the planet. And everybody upon the planet is going to be devoted to taking care of Mother Earth. Now that I don't find too objectionable, because everyone upon the planet should be devoted to taking as good care of the planet that we can, because we've only got one planet, guys. If we don't care for it, look at this. All you have to do is look at this oil spill in the, in the Gulf of Mexico, and you can see that there is the possibility that we could destroy the oceans of the world. We could destroy all the oceans of the world. And so that is something that a good environmental policy worldwide, it would be good if we could institute something like that. Okay, now what does environment have to do with Princess Diana? The environmental movement, and of course when you look at the environmental movement, you will see green on the outside, but you will see a communistic order on the inside. The green movement, and I don't want to go over to Germany and use their green movement. So if anyone knows about that young woman, I can't remember her name right now, but she was murdered, probably by the Russians or Maurice Strong. But she was the one that originally started the green movement. But her green movement, guess what? It wasn't a green on the outside, red on the inside, meaning a communist movement. No, it was a real green movement that was supposed to protect the earth. Well, Maurice Strong's green movement is green on the outside, red on the inside. It's a watermelon movement, because the laws that would be needed to enforce someone, to enforce rigid behavior from the people who live in this society, you would have to back it up with force, and the type of force and tyranny that would be needed is the type that is used in communist countries. Now, we have to go back to Maurice Strong again, because this present environmental movement is designed by Maurice Strong. Maurice Strong is the gray eminence, the behind Al Gore, since Al Gore is said to be the leader of this movement. Maurice Strong had a cousin who was maybe 20 years older than he. Her name was Anna Louise Strong. She was an avowed communist. She went to Russia shortly after the Russian Revolution. She married a Russian agronomist, somebody who helped the Russian government oversee the farming of all the land in Russia. And he proposed a way of increasing crops in the Ukraine. Well, what nobody realized is that his way of doing business was going to cause a mass famine which killed 10 million Ukrainians. And so, some people, there are different versions of how they went around killing the people. One person said that they made them soak the seeds before they planted them, and when they did that, only half the crop came up. Other people said that there was a certain amount of the food that had to be given to the Russian government, and when only half the crop came up, the Russian government wouldn't change the amount of food that was supposed to be given to Lenin, or it could have been Stalin by then. And so there was no food for the people to eat. And it was just... excuse me, I'm right in the middle of a dog fight.
That's okay. That's fine.
I mean, I have never had that done before. I have two little monster dogs, and I have one golden retriever, and the two little ones ganged up on the golden retriever.
That's okay.
I really thought he was going to eat them alive.
We had Sean's son basically scream like a chupacabra earlier, so it's fun. It's completely okay.
Okay. So what we have is we've got a man named Maurice Strong, whose cousin was responsible for creating the famine in the Ukraine, and that famine literally killed as many people as Hitler killed. In these concentration camps, it killed more. He killed 6 million Jews and maybe another 6 million gypsies and people like that. But the Ukrainian famine killed 10 million, and then add that to the 20 million that Stalin had already killed. So what we've got in this Agenda 21 that Maurice Strong wants to push down our throats. And interestingly enough, Maurice Strong now has to live in China because he appears to be wanted in Canada and in the United States. Let me tell you another thing that you probably will remember. Do you remember the Temple of the Solar Order, all of those Knights Templars, the new Knights Templar organization that started up in Canada?
Yes, ma'am.
Then there were two mass suicides, one in Canada and one in France, where all of those people killed themselves. Now, I don't know who killed them, but what I did know is that the head of the sect, Maurice Strong, started the sect. And the man that he appointed the head of the sect was, interestingly enough, he was a homeopathic doctor. And of course, they probably thought that would turn the whole world against homeopathy. But he also was a scientist, possibly even a microbiologist. They were working on some sort of poison to literally, kill hundreds of thousands of people. Like the one, oh gosh, where in the world did that go off? In the one that Saddam Hussein used on the Kurds, that literally wiped out over 100,000 Kurds. That was a chemical gas. But the ones that the Temple of the Solar Order were working on, they were working on biologicals. And of course, they were suicided. Now, did somebody that knew they were working on biologicals suicide them? I don't know. I've been told that they were actually killed by Interpol because of that. But anyway, Maurice Strong is the man that created that organization, and he created that organization to create biologicals. And I would imagine that the biologicals are part of his program to get rid of 7.5 billion people, because in the view of the New World Order, the Earth cannot sustain that many people. And I don't know whether they're right or not. I don't think anyone knows whether they're right or not. We can't trust science anymore. Going back to Maurice Strong and his idea for the coming world, we have the goddess Gaia, and he is planning on reintroducing the goddess Gaia. This has been the plan for almost 30 years now. But the goddess Gaia is very obscure. The name, people have a hard time with the name. And so shortly after Princess Diana was killed, this idea sprung up among all of the elite environmentalists that Diana needs to be the face of the goddess, not goddess Diana, not goddess Gaia, but now goddess Diana. And I guess it was she died in August, and maybe about a month or two later, I received a phone call. I was receiving all sorts of phone calls. Don't ask me why. Well, maybe ask me why. I had written a couple of definitive articles on Diana and showed how she was just about to be married off to one of the top eligible young bachelors or young men in our country. And the three that were being chosen was Bill Clinton. Of course, he was married to Hillary at the time. That wouldn't matter because, Hillary would have an accident or a plane crash. The other one was George W. Bush. And of course, that would mean that Laura would have a plane crash too. And the other one was Jay Rockefeller. And his wife, I believe, is Sharon Percy, and I think she's the one that ran NPR, but I may be wrong about that. I'm pulling it out of my memory without having notes in front of me. But anyway, during the time that Diana was visiting America in search of a husband, she actually spent a few hours with John Kennedy Jr. And according to people who they had spoken with, they had fallen madly in love with each other. She went directly from being with John F. Kennedy to having breakfast at the White House. Hillary was there alone. Bill was in New York giving a speech about something the senior Kennedy had done. Whatever Hillary told Diana caused Diana to flee America. She never came back again except for the funeral of one of her friends, I think it was the Armani funeral, but I again, my memory, I don't have it in front of me. I could be remembering it wrong. When she flew home, the person that she went to was her father's best friend, Mohammed Al-Fayed. Before her father died, her father told her, if you ever have any problems, you see Mohammed Al-Fayed, because he is the only one who has enough strength to protect you from being killed. Even her father knew there was something fishy here. Even her father warned her. So she goes directly to see Mohammed Al-Fayed. And I think that Hillary told her the truth, that if she didn't do what they wanted her to do, she was going to be killed. And of course, she said that her husband She mentioned that on a program that she recorded. She said that her husband was planning on killing her in an automobile accident. So she flies to England from Washington, D.C., meets with Mohammed Al-Fayed, and the first thing he does is call up his son and get back here. You guys are going to get married. I mean, that is the first thing that she does. He does. He literally decides that to protect her, we have to bring her into our family and marry her off. That was his way of protecting them. And this was she was killed in 97, and this was in November of 96 that they met. And I have an actual CIA document that says that it was shortly after they met that they began having a relationship. Well, the newspaper wants you to think that they hadn't begun having a relationship until 3 months before she died. Well, no, it was, she died in August and they met the following November, so it was November, the previous November. So it was November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. They had known each other for 10 months. And at the time I wrote the book, in 99, mine was one of the first books out, and it didn't have anything whatsoever to do with the accident. It had to it led up to why the accident was caused and the fact that her image was going to be used to create a new environmental religion, a la Maurice Strong. This is all the information that was told to me by the man on the phone, that she was killed so they could use her face to become the face of the Princess Diana, of the goddess Diana. The goddess Diana would be an environmental religion where the laws were punishable by the same means that the goddess Diana's, if you blaspheme the goddess Diana, or if you sinned against the goddess Diana, the tortures and the whatever, you were put in a wicker basket and burned alive slowly, those would be the punishments. We would no longer have a EPA and a book of laws that the EPA demands you to do. The EPA book would literally become the Bible for the world. The environment would become the goddess. And if we sinned against the goddess, if we sinned against the environment, we were sinning against the goddess who gives us life and food and takes care of us. In other words, we would be going back to pagan religions that barely even had languages to hold them together. That was what they would want us to go back to. That was the information that I put in my book. There's another part of what the man on the telephone told me that I didn't include in the book. And it was about Queen Elizabeth. She was Princess Elizabeth at the time. But she attended what I can only believe is a satanic ritual, and where she was raped by all of the men that were attending it. That would be all of the, this was before she married, probably Princess Philip was there. These were all of the men that were probably old enough to marry her. And what she had to promise was her firstborn child, the child born of this union, was going to be given to this cult to be sacrificed. And since I was told that, I have discovered that there are certain days in the satanic ritual cycle, certain high holidays, and I can't really remember what is done at all of them, but on one of them, a baby is sacrificed. And usually, I mean, I hate even talking about this because it is so horrible, but the sacrifice of this baby, it's torn apart alive and eaten by the people who are there. I mean, it is the most disgusting thing that one of the most disgusting things I've ever heard. But that was how Princess Elizabeth came to be Queen Elizabeth. Because evidently there was someone else that had more right to the throne than she did. There was an illegitimate child of the Duke of Windsor, the one that stepped down because he was more in love with his girlfriend than he was with the throne. And I never have believed that story. But that man did have a child, and the children of illegitimate kings and queens, if they are recognized by the king or queen, are just as legitimate and have just as much right to the throne as the legitimate ones. And so evidently there was a child, and whether the child is still alive now, I don't know. But the fact that Elizabeth agreed to play ball, with the Satanists who run the world, and I have finally come to the conclusion that is exactly what it is. We've got a lot of people who believe in Satanism, pedophilia, and those are the people who run the world, and those people use blackmail on our elected leaders. They are able to implicate our elected leaders in snuff films that have the elected leader there. I mean, they could. I'll give you an example of something that happened at the pig farm up in Canada. The pig farm was a place where everybody who was anybody went to be seen, because all the big guys went to this pig farm, and there were great parties going on at the pig farm. Well, an example of what we think happened was there was a man standing on stage next to the woman that was doing a striptease, and without the man even realizing what had happened, he was laughing and smiling and drinking and waving to the people in the audience. A guy in a hooded mask comes up behind the stripper with a chainsaw and cuts her in half. That's on tape. That's on video. What would that man's constituency think if that was released? And there he is running for, I don't know what they call him, not president, but prime minister in Canada, and suddenly that scene with him next to the girl being cut in half at the pig farm. Now, they did find a lot of bodies at the pig farm, but I don't think they found all of the bodies at the pig farm, because I think there were hundreds and hundreds of young women that were taken out there and in snuff films, taken apart piece by piece. Now, this information, if anybody is interested in following up this information, I've done a lot of work myself on pedophile cults and things like that. But that particular pig farm information comes from David Hawkins, who is part of the David Hawkins Field McConnell team that has been releasing some of the most incredible information that you can imagine. And you can go to Abel, A-B-E-L, abeldanger.blogspot.com, abeldanger.blogspot.com, and you can see their information, and I think they've even got a search engine there. And so you can probably do a search for pig farm. All you have to do is do a search for murder plus pig farm plus Canada, and you will get, the reports. Of course, the reports don't say that it's tied into tied into a worldwide cabal that uses snuff films to control the politicians. I think most of you have heard about the pedophile murders that were conducted in Europe. And they all involved politicians, people that were very, very close to politicians. And in Belgium, the people of Belgium demanded investigations. But guess what? None of those pedophiles ever went to jail, because the pedophiles have just as much information on their handlers. And so when the pedophile hunters, and there are pedophile hunters, when they get close to implicating a man or a woman in pedophilia, that person usually dies. Now, I don't know whether they die because of the pedophile eradication team that was put together under Interpol, or whether they actually do take their lives. There's an example of this. About 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, there was an orphanage on one of the islands, either Jersey or Guernsey, those little islands between England, in the Channel Islands is what they're called. And there was an orphanage that was dug up, and they found a chamber of horrors in the basement. Lots of children's bones, lots of torture equipment and chains. And they began to interview the children who were there, and heard the most horrible, horrible stories of government officials being brought to this home, being allowed to pick the children they wanted to have sex with, and they would take them into the basement, and usually the children would be tortured or killed. Okay, at that same time, 3 high-level police officials committed suicide in England. And so did they really commit suicide, or were they suicided? It's probably always best for their families if they commit suicide. Then the family doesn't have to go through the horror of admitting that their father or their husband was one of these known pedophiles. Okay, have I completely gotten off the subject of Diana? I think I may have. But it really is all related.
Yeah.
So,
did
you have any questions?
Well, I'll tell you, it makes sense, because being in sort of the realms that I'm in, at least, you see hints of something like this, but you never really get the full picture, and you always have a hard time, believing it, because you can't answer why. You can't answer why these people would do this, and you can't find a, what we would call a logical motive, but you kind of putting it out there like that, it makes sense, and it's a little scary,
Well, it is a little scary, and sadly it goes all the way down to our city officials. And so, from the highest, literally from the United Nations down to the small town officials. It's everywhere. And have you heard of Benjamin Fulford? He's the former editor of Forbes magazine in Japan, and now he has his own blog. You can just search. It may even be under fulford.com. I don't really know, but it might be under fulford.com. But he just announced that 1 million Satanists are fleeing the United States. Okay, if you're a Satanist, you're a pedophile. If you're a Satanist, you're into mind control, because that's how you control your people. So these Satanists, and a lot of people, they hear Satanists, they think of the McMartin preschool trial, and they think, oh, the Satanists, they just operate at a lower level. No, they don't. They operate at some of the highest levels known. And if you are a newly elected congressman or senator here in our area, and you have any proclivities whatsoever, maybe you like extramarital sex, maybe you like cocaine, maybe you're an alcoholic, if there is anything that they can give you that will get you into a blackmailable, what they can do is literally make films of you. They can slip you a substance like scopolamine, and under scopolamine you are instantly hypnotizable, and they will hypnotize you under this drug, and they will show you this beautiful steak dinner or this beautiful roast. That's what they'll have. They'll have this beautiful roast out on the table, and they will ask you to carve up the roast and serve everybody. So there you will be, at the head of a table, maybe serving a turkey or a big roast, and you'll be carving it up and eating a little bit yourself, having the blood run down your chin and all of that. But what you don't know is that'll be a baby you're carving up and serving a piece to everybody. And so they will have that on you. You will remember carving a turkey or carving a roast. When you see the film with the blood running down your face, it's a baby you've just carved up. And now you belong to whoever owns that film. You belong to them. You are their servant. And you have to do what they tell you to do, or they release this to the world. And if you say you'll deny it, then you run the risk of having your wife or your son or your daughter become the next sacrifice. That is how these politicians that are in Washington right now are controlled. If we vote them out and we send in a new batch, how do we know that they're not going to be blackmailed and controlled the same way? We don't. But at least what we will have is, if we vote out all the incumbents, we'll have it will take the Satanists at the top of the New World Order a lot longer to get the blackmail information on all of these people. One thing that this blogspot, abledanger.blogspot.com, is doing is, whenever they release a story, they send it to every congressman and every senator and everybody in government here in the United States and in Canada. If you ever saw the list of all the people that they send things to, it's just unbelievable. So there is no one who is going to be reelected or going to be newly elected going back to Washington that will not know how Washington operates. Let's put it that way. Getting back to Diana. Diana, as I said, was killed to introduce a new world religion. And of course, almost every day I see something in the newspaper about somebody calling for a new world religion. They want to get rid of Christianity. They want to get rid of Islam. They want to get rid of the Jews. Oh, that's my nightly call from my source. I'm going to have to miss it tonight.
I'm sorry about that.
So, yeah, sorry about that. I didn't leave a message that I was going to be on a radio show tonight.
Oh, that's okay. You know what I mean? If you know what I mean, I am really thankful that you're missing it. Put it that way.
Well, do you have any questions on anything that I have said? Because you sort of wind me up and I talk for a while, and then when I end talking, I've got to go on to another groove. So, any questions before I go on to anything else?
Well, I'll tell you, to be honest, I really don't want to stop you. Is that bad? Because normally we'll interview, but everything's been so good, and you've kind of built your case very good. And what's kind of getting me is kind of what I know about things, the very low level I've seen things. It makes sense, and it's kind of getting me. You know what I mean? So,
well, let's go back to what I said about Ben Fulford and the fact that he said 1 million Satanists are looking for a place to hide. Well, the Satanists in America that are looking for a place to hide, these are the highest of the high ranking of the Satanists. Many of them you've never heard of, but they are the ones that are controlling our politicians. And there's over 1 million of them. But look at how many people they have to control. They have to control the 2 senators from every state, all of the congressmen. They have to control the governors. They have to control the president and his family. They have to control all the state senators and assemblymen and whatever else they're called. And then you have to go down to the city levels where you have to control the mayors and all of the supervisors and the various people that are in the city levels. And so, yes, it takes 1 million Satanists to control politics here in this country. And so when Fulford said that there was 1 million of them, I was actually surprised that there were so few that are seeking to find refuge somewhere. Now, they wanted to go to Japan, interestingly enough, which must mean that there are a lot of the Satanists that are living in Japan. But Japan refused to allow them in. The Philippines was their next choice. The Philippines have refused to allow them in. In fact, almost all of China and Malaysia and that area has refused to allow them in. And I will make you a bet that China's getting ready to throw out Maurice Strong. Maurice Strong's cousin, Anna Louise, she also had to flee Canada. Maurice Strong was Canadian. Both of them were. They had to flee both Canada and the United States. And Anna Louise Strong ended up living in China, which is where she died. And I fully expect that we are not going to have Maurice Strong back in this country. However, he still does control the Chicago Credit Exchange. And so even if he's living in China, if that Chicago Credit Exchange gets up and running to the point that they are going to be making billions a year, he probably will be getting his share of those billions a year. Mm-hmm. And you know, sometimes I wonder how Al Gore ever could have been taken as seriously as he was taken. He didn't even write this book. You know, I don't even remember what his book was called, but I can remember getting a call from one of my sources many years ago, and it was right after Al Gore had released his first book. And he said, have you read Al Gore's book? And I said, no. He says, well, don't worry about it, because Al Gore hasn't read it either. And that's actually what happens in many cases. They will give a guy a book, and they'll give him a week to read it. If he hasn't had a chance to read it by the end of the week, it doesn't matter. You know, they put him on teleprompters, and he's got the questions, and they put up the answers for him. So Al Gore had not even read his book when he started going out and talking about it. I think maybe he's read his book now. But has anybody looked at Al Gore recently? He doesn't look like the vice president that we used to know. I mean, just compare current photographs of Al Gore with the Al Gore that was Bill Clinton's vice president. And, you know, yes, he's fatter and he's puffier, but his eyes don't look the same. The nose doesn't look quite right. I don't know. I think he's been replaced by some sort of a double. So I'm not even sure the original Al Gore is there anymore. And I don't think that is that uncommon. I think that a lot of people, a lot of our politicians get replaced at some point, and we don't really realize that. Well, let me talk about how they're going to introduce this New World religion. NASA has a program, and that program uses technology that has been around almost 50 years. It's called voice-to-skull technology, and it's a technology that can literally be voice. Boy, there goes my coals again. That can beam a voice right into your head. And at the same time, they have holographic material. And some people believe that is what the chemtrails are going to be doing, is creating a screen where they can project their holographic images on the screen. And so this will be happening worldwide. It's called A Night of 1,000 Stars. And they will have whoever the religious figure is in your area. This is called Project Bluebeam. They will have that person in the sky speaking. And the voice that you will hear will be in your language. It'll almost be like an automatic translator. I mean, if you're over in Japan and you're an American and you don't speak English, for somehow that voice beamed into your head is going to be speaking English. And it is going to be the voice of Princess Diana. It's going to be her face. She's going to be up in the sky, wearing the traditional garb of Mother Mary. And she is going to be talking about how the humans on Earth have been polluting her body, and how she and the other great religious people of the world are going to be joining together into a one world religion in order to preserve the earth. And that's what it's going to be about. Preserve the earth.
Well, I hate to kind of get you there, but we're kind of fast running up on the top of the hour, and I just wanted to put in one. That. I kind of don't want to stop, but unfortunately, Blog Talk will shut us down. But I wanted to get one question in from the chat room real quick, if you could.
Sure, go ahead. Uh-huh.
We had a user basically ask us, could you please kind of tell us what happened in that tunnel with Diana, and sort of, I know you kind of answered who was behind that, but sort of what happened in that tunnel with her, just for people that might be unfamiliar.
Well, what is very interesting is Diana actually got out of the car, and I'm fairly sure I do have one of those early tapes. Whenever something happens like this, the first thing you have to do is start recording it right off your television. But you see, most people don't have VCRs or don't have recording equipment hooked up to the television anymore. I'm not so sure that with the setup that I have, I would be able to record the way, if something happened now, I could record it onto my DVR. But how do I get it out of my DVR? Do you see what I'm saying? I don't know how to get it out of the cable box DVR so that I could actually share it with different people. We could watch it over and over again on this one television. But at the time she died, I was recording the tapes, and she actually got out of the car. She got out of the car and walked to the ambulance. And then when she got in the ambulance, you could see her standing before, she sat down. And then it took, let me back up a minute. There is a theory that Diana did not die. And this theory comes from a number of witnesses who were at the tunnel who believe they saw a blonde woman dressed like Diana running from the tunnel. Now, there's even more. There are people who believe that Diana is being kept safe in a monastery in Turkey, and that she did have the baby, and the baby is alive. So the baby would be, if she had, this was 97, the baby would have been born in 98. That baby, 98, 08, how old is she going to be? About 12 years old now. Mm-hmm. And there are people who claim, and I've seen the photographs, and I have to admit the woman in the photograph looks enough like Diana that it could be Diana. I have seen the photographs of this woman in this monastery in Turkey. Now, this happens to be the same monastery that Prince Charles went to on his honeymoon with Camilla, and Camilla got so angry that she went back to England. Well, evidently, Charles needed to see Diana for some reason. I don't know what the reason was, but he needed to see Diana for some reason. She probably still controlled something. And who knows? Did she really die or not? That tunnel was where she was killed. That tunnel was an ancient church of the goddess Diana. And it was more than a church. It was like an ancient hospice. If you knew you were about to die, you had to make it to the grotto that was underneath, the Pont de Alma. Pont de Alma means bridge of the souls. And if you were lucky and you got there before you died, you were able to have one of the priestesses of Diana, one that is called the Crone, because the Crone was in charge of helping people across the Bridge of Souls to heaven. Most people, when they cross the Bridge of Souls, they see the soul of their son or their daughter or their husband from another life, and they go, oh my God, I can't leave them alone. I've got to go there. I've got to help them. And so they leap right back into the reincarnational cycle. Well, if you are sick to death of the reincarnational cycle and you want to get off the earth, you would go to Pont d'Alma, because one of the priestesses at Pont d'Alma would guide you across the bridge into heaven, so that you got to plan your next life here, rather than just, helter-skelter, come back to whatever the whatever your fate was. And so not only was Pont d'Alma this sacred hospice for the goddess Diana, but there was also another legend associated with it, that was where the Merovingian kings came to duel. If they had a difference of opinion, if they both thought they owned the same property, they would go to Pont d'Alma to have the duel, and whoever won, whoever killed the other one, ended up with the other's property. But the other one went straight to heaven. This was what the rumor was. The other, not the rumor, the legend, went straight to heaven, sat on the right side of God, and literally became the head of the Merovingian order at that time. So right at the moment, Diana is sitting on, if she's alive, if she's dead, she's up in heaven, sitting on the right hand of God, overseeing what is going on here on earth. And if she's not dead, she's in that monastery in Turkey, just waiting until the right time for her to come out. And I hope the latter.
Wow.
I hope that she is in that monastery, and soon we're going to have our Princess Diana back. Wouldn't that be something?
Yes, ma'am. It's coming real close to the end of the show, and I don't want to let you go without telling our listeners basically where they can find your site and your books and learn more about you.
Well, the best thing is go over to Rayelan.com, 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 because there you'll find a site to the book Diana, Queen of Heaven, to the Obregon Chronicles, to my site Rumor Mill News, and to my radio program, Rumor Mill News Radio. So just go to Rayelan, RAYELAN.com, or just put Rayelan in the search engine. I don't think I've ever done this. Let's see what putting just plain Rayelan in a search engine comes up with.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
My computer isn't working. Yeah, no, it comes up with Rayelan.com. So if you can just remember how to spell my name, Rayelan, I'm the only Rayelan around.
Oh, yes.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh, thank you very much for
over?
being on our show. Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You have a great night. Thank you.